Coming up on the Luke Beasley Show.
If you believe the environment's the number one key issue, you got to vote for the candidate that could actually win, that's the best for the environment. And guess what? Hillary was better for the environment, and so is Joe Biden. It's just like, if that's your one issue, how about you be logical and pick the candidate that's actually going to win or has a chance of winning and is better for the environment?
I understand what you're saying. I just 100% disagree with it. I just think that it's very presumptuous of you to look at one of your fellow citizens that were born in the same country and have the same rights as you and tell them what to do. I mean,
really?
If you want to bang, they're pulling it back because they're going to.
Really? You really believe that?
I think some of this is just literally a difference in the age. It's like it's the idea. I'm just letting you know.
My soul is 300 years old, brother. Let me just remind everyone. Doug said, I wouldn't want to make you cry afterwards. That's what he said in the chat when proposing a debate or saying if we debated. And I don't see any tears, Doug. So today I have the pleasure of talking with Doug. Well, we'll see if it's a pleasure or not. I don't know. And just to kick it off, I'm going to have Doug. He has what I define as, he says, I don't know, but I think it's a very interesting past career experience that's very applicable to obviously what we talk about on this channel, politics. So for the audience, can you give a quick background on your work history?
Absolutely. Like I said, when I was your age, at a very young age, I was press secretary. Well, I was a journalist. I came out of school. And by the age of 22, I was press secretary in the Senate, state of New Mexico for the Republicans. For 2 sessions, and then I was a lobbyist for the 3rd session with the casino industry after that, because that's what everybody does, government to lobbying. And I had opportunities to go to DC, and I chose not to do it. I have, as a journalist, however, sat in, Senate offices and interviewed sitting senators. I've, on the 92 campaign, interviewed Hillary Clinton 3 times, Bill once, went to Tsongas's after party. I mean, it goes on and on and on. But it was right around your age where I started to have an interest in this kind of thing. And that's why I wanted to do this interview, because I want more people your age to be interested in politics. The fact that they're not is the main problem that we're having nowadays. You realize if people your age voted, we wouldn't be having any of these issues right now that we're having with such a divided country. If the youngest set out there that was eligible would go and vote.
Totally agree. Yes. So one of the things I said whenever we did our trial run there, while the audio wasn't going through, was just that I have given a lot of thought about, okay, if I want politics to be something that I spend my life working in, what's going to be the pinnacle goal for how I could actually make change, rather than just, oh, I feel good because I've spent my whole life, doing something that makes change. Like, what would actually make lasting change? And I've come to realize, as you're saying, if I can work to get people more aware about these issues, especially in the younger generations, the ones that are going to be stepping into those positions of power, and deciding who's in those positions of power, are aware about these issues and read up on them and passionate about them and motivated enough to go out and push for what they believe in, we could actually do a lot of great things in this country, and we have the numbers for it. But the issue is, as you're identifying, a lot of people don't care. I've talked to so many people recently who are friends of mine and that I interact with day to day, who are like, politics, I mean, I don't really keep up. It's kind of dumb. And it's like, yeah, it's dumb because not enough people keep up with it and are passionate about it.
I'd like to make one other point, because I think a friend of mine from Europe is in the audience. She said she was going to be. They have a multi-party system there. So if you have like I'm a libertarian, you're a Democrat, you can go one way or another. You can go to a coalition, party, on issues and things like that. And they come together that way and make decisions. Here, it's just all out battle.
Yes.
It's all out battle.
And one of the things that you felt, was a significant point too, was that people don't have an understanding of what it's like to be a journalist and what the media is actually doing day to day. So explain your sentiment on that.
As you brought up, a little bit ago about Dave Pakman, who's, for people that don't know, he's all over YouTube. pretty well known. But the fact that he sits there and watches what goes on in, the press briefing room, and today was Jen Psaki's last day, so he filmed it live. And, he wasn't too negative, but a couple times. Well, why do they ask the same question? Why do they ask, why do they do this? And why, what a stupid question and all that kind of stuff. A lot of times you'll see the journalists there work as a pack, and you'll see them ask one question, and then you'll see somebody from, see CNN ask one question, and Fox News will jump in and ask something that's just slightly different. And then if they still aren't getting the truth, MSNBC comes in and asks something slightly different. And then by the time they get to the fourth person, that fourth person has a bigger picture and asks a more substantial question that really gets to the heart of the matter that's there. And, that watching that as a trained journalist, that's exactly what's happening. But, somebody like, Pacman, who sits there and has, all these opinions about media and has never actually worked in it himself, but yet makes money off the coverage, off of criticizing the coverage. That's, I guess, my main issue with him. Generally, though, in most things, I agree with him, politically on most things. But that's just one thing. It's so annoying that I want to turn it off every time. But it's just out of lack of knowledge.
So I'm assuming you agree that not everyone can be a journalist in their life. And then I'm assuming that you agree there's a place for people to cover politics, like what I do, what a lot of people do. So if you're someone covering politics, it should be acceptable that you critique the press bill, for example. And like, for example, I think you would agree that making fun of the Ducey dude who asks really stupid questions is appropriate. So is it just bad criticisms that bother you, or is it generally kind of we're up here without any experience criticizing?
Yes, it's uninformed criticism that bothers me. If you want to criticize somebody, obviously anybody that watches Ducey knows that this guy's just a hack. But, to not understand some of the other things and why people are asking questions a certain way, to not give thought before you speak, even as a commentator, is, weak. It's weak-minded. And I mean, and I think what bothers me the most is as he's doing it, he's making money off of views. And I mean, I guess it's no different than if some like crazy right-winger did the same thing, but it's just something that he has to be. I just feel like he has to be more aware of and understand that the whole process, when you went and did something for him when you're running around covering, and I think he paid you a little bit of money to do that. Great. He's got all his millions of followers and yet makes no real effort into covering news, just critiquing.
Yeah,
there's a difference between the two things. I understand what you're saying, but they're also related. That's my issue. That you can't sit there as a commentator and disrespect the people that are actually bringing in the things for you to commentate on, and make a paycheck. I mean,
it's interesting. And then after this, we're going to, just for the audience's sake, so you understand, we're going to I'm going to pick a few issues where I hope we might disagree. We'll do a little debate. And then at the end, we're going to get back to what's our vision united for the future. But to finish up on this point, I actually have an issue too with maybe the hyperbolic nature of progressives' criticism of the media. I think the media is broken in a lot of ways, and one of those is that it is view-based, it is profit-motived, all those things. And so sometimes what they should be talking about for the sake of engaging and educating the citizenry is not what they're talking about because Trump gets more views.
Yes, your medium is view oriented and things like that. And your medium doesn't necessarily require anybody to have a background, or sometimes if you look around, not even some basic knowledge. And I think, when you get to a certain level, you owe it to your viewers to be able to step back, think about what you're saying. And I mean, you're not obviously there yet, but he is, and he should, at least, talk to a couple people and see what they think about how he criticizes them.
Yeah. So I agree. And then I just think that, pretending like there's this big media plot to trick everyone, like I've heard the Young Turks talk about before, a little issue I have with them. I agree sometimes they don't fairly cover certain issues, but I think it's just because they give credence to the people who have the microphone. And right now it's more like corporate politicians who have the microphone. And so I think that that's kind of natural that's going to happen.
No, I want to make a good point about what you just said. You know what? That's how Donald Trump got elected. We gave credence to the person that spoke the loudest and the biggest microphone. And look at what that did to us. Look what that did to us. That's a perfect example of what you just said. And why we shouldn't be looking at that. Why we have to give journalists who are trying to do a job some credit.
Yeah. I agree. And I've heard people say like journalism is dead today. And I think they miss out because all they watch is like you're saying, the coverage of the original reporting or the critique of the original reporting. They're not actually diving into the original reporting. And that's why for my show, I try not to get my news from the commentary places. I get it from, written sources that are kind of the known, trusted ones. Yep. And there's actually amazing journalism happening every single day. It's just not what's getting play on the places where most people, actually get their news from.
And most people your age.
Or, yeah, right, exactly.
A lot of people get their news from Fox. So there you go.
A lot older, exactly, yeah. For example, I get this delivered. Just what's up?
You know how insulting that is? What do you do with it? Lie in the dog cage?
No, I read it every day. Okay, moving on. So here's the question to get into a little bit of interesting back and forth. You call yourself a libertarian. Are you calling yourself a libertarian like the on the right libertarian? Because before you say it, I know there's some socialists who call themselves libertarian socialists. So I'm just specifying you're saying you're a small government libertarian.
Yes. Generally speaking, yes. However, what I think what a lot of, at least for me when I watch your show, is that I'm watching you try to figure it out for yourself and try to figure out who exactly you are and where you fall on spectrums.
I figured everything out. I know everything already.
Yeah. Okay. You think so? Yeah. That's why your car insurance is high, kid. But what I'm going to tell you is it's good to pick and think about issues and decide on your own. Like for instance, I believe in some kind of basic health care across the country. At the same time, I agree with the right to bear arms because I've seen it out in your area. I used to live in New Mexico. Out in your area where, it's a tool. It's a tool for coyotes. It's a tool, so you can't just blanketly say one thing or another about a lot of issues. But yeah, no more with small government, get out of my face. But yeah. But at the same time, I think there should be basic services and there's a need for government. So I'm not on the anarchist side at all. And I'm not on the hyper conservative side because, like I said, schools should be funded and, but I am, I did help pass when I was in the legislature, I helped pass the school voucher program, which I agree with because it should be up to a parent. If we as a society say we're going to pay for your kid, they should be able to decide how that kid is educated. So, I'm good with that too.
So we may be devaluing the purpose of that term libertarian then, because I don't think someone who is willing to have the government at a size that it could take care of everyone's health care, which I agree with, falls into the box of libertarian.
Well, it depends because we're talking about one specific thing. And I'm telling you that there's other things that I am way more conservative about and way more and that's why I brought up gun control right after that. There are things that are, and I'm talking, there are things that a government has a responsibility to do as a baseline. But above that baseline, there shouldn't be any government interaction into telling you how to live your life, what to do, I disagree with a lot of things. One of the things that I did mention to you, Luke, if you, at the end of this, you want to hear something that I agree with, that one of the justices about, that's a good example of how I am, also on certain issues on the other side of the spectrum. So being able to be on both sides of spectrums and have different opinions is fine, but you can still define yourself as I'm more this or I'm more that.
Yeah, it's totally fine on some things for you to be incorrect. That's acceptable. So on gun control, I agree that you have the right to bear arms. My question is when I hear a lot of people say that from the conservative, or you said you weren't conservative, but from the, libertarian or right-wing perspective, it's, I don't want any regulation, or I want as very, tiny regulation on my right to bear arms. Now, I understand even free speech, is I think is one of the most important and should be limited very little. We understand there's limits on free speech. You can't just threaten someone's life. And so do you stand with 80+% of the country with universal background checks and closing the gun show loophole?
A gun isn't a thing that I'm too worried about because it's not anything that I personally want to own. But of course, if you, a background check, especially nowadays, and so you have to. That's another thing. You have to be able to change with the times. Especially nowadays. Of course, you need a basic background check, but you can't limit the number of guns or the type of guns that people have. Does anybody need a rapid fire, mow them down kind of gun? No. But, I can see reasons, like legitimate reasons for handguns, for shotguns especially, for other things that are tools of the trade for a lot of people that do various jobs that are both dangerous or potentially deadly. So, I'm okay with that. I mean, I have a friend that wants to eliminate all guns, doesn't understand why anybody needs a gun at all.
Yeah, but I think the most people agree that guns aren't something we have to completely get rid of, partly because how would you even, I don't know, maybe some people, like you said, some people possibly believe that, but that's not the majority position, and that's not even the majority of Democrats or progressives. I think when, again, the conversation around gun control even comes up, it's people saying, no, a bunch of school shootings happen, don't ban the automatic guns. Don't do any more layers of regulation or any hoops that people have to jump through, because that's violating my Second Amendment. And we're saying, no, you have a Second Amendment, you can get a gun, it just is a process. Like, I think the fact that it's easier to get a gun than it is to get your driver's license, really weird. We need people to get driver's license and go through tests and a sort of extensive course. I mean, and then go to a place, get tested, because we understand that driving a car is a very dangerous thing to do. I think it should be a similar process. You have to go through a course, you have to go to a place, you have to get tested, as well as a background check, just like the DMV, to get a license to have a gun.
I'm not necessarily on that same page where I think that, especially if it's part of your personal culture and your family, putting people through, a 40-hour course or, things like that is unnecessary. I think, for the basic tools of owning these things that you grew up with all the time. They aren't as deadly as a car because it is about the person who does the shooting. It is not about the weapon itself. So if you do background checks, make sure that person, just like you would.
That argument never makes sense to me. It's about the person. Of course it's about the person. But another example, driving, the person may be irresponsible. A person may get drunk. That same person can do much more damage if they get drunk and get in a car. So part of the reason why you have to be deemed responsible to a threshold to get a driver's license is because we understand that just being an irresponsible. So then the analogy, of course, is just being a violent person is one thing, but being a violent person who can very easily get access to something that can allow you to enact that violence in a much more devastating manner does create a larger threat to society.
Okay.
So
it's, we're going to disagree on this one a little bit, but not a lot, but a little bit, because I just think that, I'm all for, what they used to call the girlfriend rule at one point, which I felt that was really demeaning. But, in cases of domestic violence and things like that, where a judge could suspend the right to own a firearm I was okay with, but to eradicate for a long period of time, no, not so much, because people's lives change over time. You know, you can't just tell somebody that you can't have your Second Amendment for 40 years for a lifetime ban, anything like that. You know, I just think that's incorrect to do. I think that's overreach by the judiciary.
So generally, because here's what I guess I'm getting to. Are you recognizing, and after I say this sentence, let me say one more and then jump in. Are you recognizing that, yes, having easy access to guns causes more devastation, but it's so important that people have that easy access that I don't care. I don't want to be like really provocative with my language, that I'm okay with that trade-off. Or are you saying, no, it doesn't cause devastating consequences? Because is it just a coincidence that we have more firearms per capita than any other country, and also more firearm deaths than any other country per capita?
If you look at the history of this, a good example, I mean, and I hate to use this because of it being such a topical thing, but if, you know, we had 5 guns for every person in the Ukraine, what would be happening right now? That was the reason that the Second Amendment was put into place in our country, and we have never had a land invasion in 250 years. I mean, that's a fact. Now,
you understand that's nonsense.
It has morphed into things where, when you've got social media, I mean, you know, they make excuses for all these reasons that people are doing all these other things. But the idea that you don't have your gun locked up and your 16-year-old can get in there and, you know, blow away a school because that's what they saw online at one point. Yeah, I mean, so there has to be some kind of restrictions, but there's a good base reason for the Second Amendment. And
I agree. A Second Amendment, yes, but a regulated Second Amendment.
To some extent, as our culture changes, these shootings weren't happening 20 years ago when you were born. This is a Columbine on thing. This is a 20 years ago, I guess it is. But, you know, this is a Columbine on thing. This didn't really happen before that, you know, and there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of things that I think that parents need to have more interaction with their kids. You know, I think there's a lot of reasons for it.
Yeah. And that's why I think, okay, so if a parent had to go in and do a, like you said, 40-hour course and then train with someone, get tested by someone who's, you know, from the state, just like we do at the DMV, and they got taught throughout that 40-hour course, it is so important that if you have a child, it's locked up, and if you do this, it's this and this and this. That would be brilliant. It would align perfectly with what it sounds like you think should be in the minds of people.
I understand what you're saying, but at some point you have to believe that as citizens of the society that people are generally responsible. I think people are generally responsible. I think, though, there are bad apples. And I do think when you're right, you have so many guns and people can get their hands on them a lot easier. Of course, you're going to have increased violence, but it's only because of a certain small segment of the population. And it's more about doing a background check and not maybe giving a gun to an ex-felon as soon as they get out on the street than it is to stop the grandfather that wants to pass down his family heirloom shotgun to his grandchild and can't do it. And you know, I mean, I think that's just, I think there's such a wide breadth of what we use and think of guns for in this country. I mean, I know people that live in cities that think literally that no guns should be allowed anywhere ever again.
Yeah, that to me is...
Let's round them up. Well, but it's also cultural. Look where I mean, I think I know the area of the country that you're in. It's cultural too.
Austin, Texas, yeah. I say it.
Yeah, it's cultural.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know, yeah, but I've existed, or, you know, I just moved back from Los Angeles, and I agree. There's some people who have an irrational view on stuff, but for the most part, I think it's just where do we want to draw the line. And the thing that upsets me so much is by perpetuating the I believe in the Second Amendment line as if a large swath of the country doesn't. You're playing into the conservatives' lie that Democrats want to take all your guns, which has been getting said. Literally, Alex Jones has made that whole lie up about these false flag operations. I'm not comparing y'all, I'm just making a point. And many other politicians have said for years, Republicans exclusively, almost, that the Democrats are trying to take your guns. It hasn't happened. We've been in power, hasn't happened. And so I think by going, listen, one of the reasons that I'm libertarian is because I believe in the Second Amendment, without saying any other context, is like, and not that you were required in that point, definitely plays into.
Okay.
Someone said can't hear anything. What?
Two things.
Go for it. Go for it.
First, I know I'm old and fat, but never again compare me to Alex Jones, ever.
I'm not comparing. I'm saying you're playing into his into people like his narrative.
You know, but you just happen to pick this particular subject, and so I just told you my view on this particular subject.
And I'm saying you should say I'm for a very regulated Second Amendment.
If you ask me other reasons I consider to be libertarian as compared to a Democrat or a Republican, I mean, I can tell you. And it is my view that libertarians, basically, the way I view libertarianism, walk right between the two parties. And that they're more fiscally conservative and they want smaller government, and yet liberally are as accepting as you could possibly find out there. So, with that being the guiding principle of libertarianism, and everybody has their own definition of it, I think that's exactly where I fall, and I think that's where a lot of human beings fall. But because we're in a two-party system, people think that if you don't vote for one, that's a vote for the other. And the thing that bothered me the most this time around between Trump and Biden is that I really hate Donald Trump for is that he took away my vote, because I didn't want Joe Biden whatsoever. However, I had to vote for Joe Biden because if not, we've got Donald Trump. I mean, the lesser of the two evils argument is just something that you can either believe and vote that way the rest of your life, or you can vote with your ideals. And I've chosen even now to vote as much of the time as I can with my ideals. But the last time I didn't, I had to vote for Biden, and I really didn't want to. Okay,
so this is super interesting. This is fascinating to me. Two topics I want to cover. You can pick which order. First, lesser of two evil voting. I think, and I said this on the stream the other night in a provocative way, but in a kind way, I think it is very, very unintelligent and illogical to not vote for a candidate out of principle, even if you understand that they are the better out of the two candidates. When you do have two candidates to vote on, and one of them is better, and I don't know if you are willing to admit that. I think you are. Or yeah, you are. Why wouldn't you vote for the one that is better, even if it's lesser of two evils?
Because I would like
the second question. Wait. But just my mind is in bullet point form all the time. Okay. So the second question, and we'll do it in the order I laid out because it's perfect. The second one is pretty much why you wouldn't want to vote for Joe Biden. Let's set that aside. We'll get to that next. So first, why did you in 2016, and I don't actually blame it on you. I think Hillary Clinton didn't run a good enough campaign. That's why she lost. That's the simplest explanation. I was kidding. But we heard a lot of people arguing, even people who are on the left, but they didn't feel like Hillary was good enough, that it is perfectly moral and reasonable and logical for me not to vote at all, or for me to vote for a third party, because I feel like Hillary's so bad, even though I'm willing to admit she's better than Donald Trump. Where do you stand on that?
Okay, you have to, for yourself, Luke, just define citizenship for yourself. For me, I know that I was born American, and when I turn 18 years old, I can vote my conscience, my choice, and the direction I want my country to go. That can be the Green Party. That can be libertarian. That can be Marxist.
It can, but should it?
I think it is your responsibility as a citizen
to vote for the better candidate.
To vote the direction that you believe that the country should go. And that's what makes a democracy. That's what makes this exchange of ideas. And if not, if you're just voting against the other person, that's why people don't care. That's why people are so apathetic, especially young people. Well, both of them suck. Well, yeah, So then vote for something that you want, but at least vote. At least do your duty as a citizen of the United States and freaking vote. Because I do know somebody who might be following. She, even though she's lived here 10 years, can't vote and would love to vote. And by the way, would probably vote exactly the way you would like her to vote, Luke. But what I would like her to do is vote the way that she sees things. And trust me, it's not the way I necessarily see things. It wouldn't be, the way that you might see everything. But I feel like it's a right of any citizen to do it. Now, she's a green card holder, so I don't feel like it's her right. But I think it's a responsibility.
So, yeah, okay. First off, I totally agree. The beautiful thing about democracy is you can vote, amazing, and you can vote for whoever you want. And I think that's amazing. It's your right. You can do whatever you want, of course. What I'm saying is, as someone who wants to, for a living, try to convince people of things politically, I want to convince people that when they look at an election, like a general election, they should vote for the better candidate and that has a chance of winning. Okay?
According to who? You see,
if you, okay, no. Before you say that, if you cannot look at an election between Joe Biden and Trump and say Joe Biden or Trump is going to win this election, something's going wrong in the brain. But wait, no. I gave you your second. Let me talk. So the time that you vote your conscience is in the primaries. It's when you are trying to decide who's going to represent the parties. And I totally agree. Don't listen to the media who might have a preference and say, hey, Joe Biden seems more electable. Vote for who you want to be the nominee. And then once that has happened, it's too late for you to believe that some magical candidate is going to come out of nowhere and become president. So you do have to choose between those two candidates. The primaries, you can do amazing things. I supported Bernie in the primaries. The general election, why would you not just pick the better of two options?
Okay. Considering where you're from, this is especially important. If you remember back, or no, you don't remember because you weren't here yet, but I actually volunteered at Ross Perot's headquarters. Do you know how much of a difference Ross Perot made? Do you know that the third party candidate got 17% of this vote when there's two establishment candidates there? People were angry back then, and they wanted the alternative and everything else. But quite frankly, I liked a lot of things he said. He was hands off when it came to social issues, and he was small government. I liked a lot of things that he said, and I just want to give you an example, and that was Jesus. I was literally like maybe a year older than you at that point. So, I was driving around the country right after graduation from college, and I stopped and volunteered for a full day at Ross Perot's headquarters. And, he probably wasn't going to win, but he got a hell of a lot closer than a lot of people thought. And if you give up the idea that change can come and you're just stuck with these two things, how depressing is that?
No, you're not stuck with these two things. Of course not. But you have to make that change before the general election comes around.
No, because, well, first of all, with Gary Johnson in 2016, I know him personally, so that, kind of helps. But honestly, I interviewed her several times. And first of all, she's way smarter than Bill Clinton is. You can just tell that. But secondly, I'm like, she has had so much of a hand in this government, probably more than anybody since Thomas Jefferson, that I don't think that she needed to be president. She's already exerted her will, her influence, and everything. However, he was a nutcase. And so there was just no good choice. If Gary Johnson hadn't been running, I wouldn't have voted for either. I would have not voted. And I think that's what a lot of people do, especially young people, when there's a potential for them to get active and involved. They just look at it and go, Jesus, this sucks. I'm not going to vote. I'm not even going to follow it.
And to me, what I want to convince people of is that is illogical. For you to look and think, I didn't do anything. Maybe they did, but let's say they didn't. Before October or before that, September, and now I'm sitting here and saying, I don't care anymore because these two options are bad. Well, it's like, yes, we have to work as a progressive young movement or just a young movement to get better politicians nominated for, in my case, the Democratic Party. When you wait all the way until the general election, and once you lose, like Bernie lost, and once you get over being sad, you got to vote for who's better, because your vote does matter. And I think being of the mind that my little emotions, because I'm bummed out, is more important than the fate of the country, if you undeniably agree that Hillary would have been better than Trump, which I don't know if you do, but a lot of people will concede that to me and then say I still don't want to vote for her, and same thing with Joe Biden, then okay, you're a little emotional bundle of, logic-free thoughts, and that's fine.
Well, looking back on it now, in retrospect, everything's 2020. At the time, it was it was what's worse. I mean, it was bad either way. Honestly, though, at that time, without Trump ever having had a chance, I was just praying once he got elected. And I remember working at the polls that day and out of the bar with all my poll workers after that. And I just went up and said, North Carolina, because I knew at that point he was going to win. And I thought, okay, hopefully he'll come around and actually be a good president. He'll hire the right people in. It didn't happen. You have to hope. If you don't have hope for your country, man, I mean, if this is what causes apathy right there, is it when you don't have any hope. And when people look at things, and if somebody wants to vote for Jill Stein because they believe that the environment is the number one key issue, and
if you believe the environment's the number one key issue, you got to vote for the candidate that could actually win, that's the best for the environment. And guess what? Hillary was better for the environment, and so is Joe Biden. It's just like, if that's your one issue, how about you be logical and pick the candidate that's actually going to win, or has a chance of winning, and is better for the environment?
Let's put it this way. I'd rather encourage people to vote and do their due diligence as a citizen of the United States than have them just go, eh.
And why does that have to be the alternative? If I can make a logical argument to them for why they should vote, agreed, everyone should vote, and vote for the correct candidate, then...
And that's what I want to do.
That's what I'm doing.
I'm sitting here trying to convince you that libertarian is the way that you should be. However, I could do that. I can point out the fact that Hillary Clinton was very late to the game with LGBT issues. I can point that Hillary Clinton has been horrific there's a few other things, but
lots of things, tons of things she was horrific about.
I mean, libertarians have been pro-LGBT for forever. I mean, since I was your age, I mean, that's for sure. And she was not. I mean,
but do you understand that this
Obama was not.
Like a different conversation than the one we were having?
Then we have Joe Biden on the other side, who is virtue signaling to everyone. When the first comments out of went out of Psaki's mouth is, "Oh, we have a new candidate for this position, and she will be black. She will be a lesbian." Okay, all right, enough. Oh, well, we have this black woman only on the court thing. I was just like, oh, just do it. The woman is totally qualified. Just do it. Don't say it. Don't. Yeah. Because it takes away from that individual. Totally.
So I think you probably, maybe people saw my video about Ketanji Brown Jackson getting nominated was similar to that. I think it's amazing to want to pick people who represent, different identities in our country, make the people in power represent better the population. All that's great. I don't know why he needs to announce it in advance or even announce that was a criteria, because then you open yourself up to massive criticism from conservatives. I totally agree, especially because she was very qualified. But and I also agree that one of the things the Democratic Party does a lot is virtue signal and say the right things, but not actually, actions speak louder than words, not actually do the actions that improve people's lives materially. I agree. If nothing else, though, and I spend so many hours of my life thinking about how many ways the Democratic Party is bad and doesn't live up to what it should. Doesn't change the fact that as where we stand today, undeniably, when you come to a general election, the Democrat's going to be, at least I'm not talking small, local elections. Federally, the Democrat's going to be the better option. And even on LGBTQ issues, At least they're out there virtue signaling and not banning trans people from the military. Like, at least they're not doing negative actions, if nothing else.
Well, okay, because we agree on this one point, and let's just walk this for a second. What's your view on affirmative action?
Sorry, what did you say?
What's your view on affirmative action?
I think generally there's a lot of different, areas, and some cases are a little weird. Generally, I think whenever you identify such a massive tip on the scale, I think it's okay for society to agree to put some weights on the other side of the scale in the form of affirmative action. So we've gotten a lot more representation in higher education, in certain positions and jobs because of affirmative action. And I think as quickly as we can get away from that being a need, the better. But I would not deny the fact that it's had a good effect on the country.
So when we're looking at Judge Jackson, who was totally qualified, right? But he said he was only going to nominate a black woman, and which is 7% of the U.S. population. He was only going to do that because it had never been done before. And you even just said that you felt like that was, overstepping a bit and it was detracting a little bit from her. You know who shares that opinion?
Who?
Clarence Thomas. Justice Thomas completely agrees with you. So, if I can leave you, at some point with that thought right before you fall off to sleep tonight, that you agree with Clarence Thomas on something, there it is. So,
I agree with a lot of people on a lot of things. I'm sure Clarence Thomas agrees that you should drink water.
So there is a spectrum of things that, you can see outside of what your particular party tells you to believe. And I think that that's what is lost. And, with libertarians, they're pretty open. Every candidate has a slightly different belief in a lot of things when it comes to taxes and spending and, and rules and laws and everything else. To me, though, most libertarians are right down the middle in society and in culture. They're neither far right or they're neither far left. They're neither one.
Okay, now the second question is, you said you did not want to vote for Joe Biden. My biggest issue with Joe Biden is that he didn't follow through on the promises he made on the campaign trail. But pre-election, the promises he made were pretty darn cool. So why pre-election would you be against someone who promised a lot of really good actions? Because at least you can just try to hold them to their own promises. Whereas Trump, what are we going to do? Convince him to all of a sudden not be him?
Right. Well, first off, he's had an amazing career and we should all applaud him for that. And he's not just been a great vice president, but he's been a great senator. It's nothing personal, but the guy's old. He's very old. And when you set up with, and then James Clyburn from, South Carolina, says on an interview that I was watching, says, yeah, well, you know what? Joe Biden told me for the vice president nomination, his heart tells him one thing and his head tells him something else. That is exactly why I wouldn't vote for Joe Biden, because what we were just talking about with the virtue signaling and that kind of stuff, because he was interviewing Gretchen Whitmer at the same time from Michigan. Great. So his heart is telling him one thing and his head is telling him something else. But then he turned and picked Kamala Harris. Anybody that when you can see somebody that's of a certain age make those kind of decisions based on some kind of ideology without using any common sense, it makes me wonder, when we were pulling out of Afghanistan, if the head of the Department of Defense is the right person, or was it just more important that he was the first black man to ever hold that office? You start to wonder. It starts to make you, really start to doubt some things about people and their ability. And it's really a sad thing. And I think it's more divisive for the country. And I don't think there's a reason for it.
Wait, I'm not super clear, on what you're saying, because obviously I did not prefer Joe Biden in the primary.
Yeah.
So clearly I recognized a lot of those issues. I get the old thing. He's definitely not as sharp as he used to be. Severely not as sharp.
Right.
He's definitely kind of declining. I don't at all think, I think it's so dumb when people are like, he doesn't know where he is. I'm like, have you ever had an elderly family member? They just start slowing down in their communication skills and their critical, fast, efficient thinking. They're not lost on what planet they're on. That's what people pretend like. So with Joe Biden, though, I don't understand what would be tough as someone with your ideology once he was picked as the nominee to be like, yeah, he's the one I want to vote for. That's not that hard of a decision.
Well, he was the one I had to vote for because the other option, like you said, was Trump. And if it wasn't Trump, though, if both candidates could be actually rational human beings that wouldn't lead to the destruction of the earth, I could have voted for my ideal, which might have been libertarian. It might have been a different party. I couldn't do that because Trump is so crazy. And that's, the chief thing that I just dislike about Donald Trump is that he stole my vote in 2020 and I had to vote for Biden. Yeah, it's not anything I want to do. And I just gave you one good example of why not. But I just also think, or two examples, the virtue signaling and the age thing. There's a bunch of other reasons. But would I prefer him over Hillary? Absolutely.
And did you support / feel some sort of gratification with his American Rescue Plan? With the fact that he pulled all the troops out of Afghanistan?
Oh, he's been amazing on the world stage. He was the right guy at the right time. Can you imagine what would have happened to this country if Trump was in charge? First of all, we wouldn't even be helping Ukraine out. That's a guarantee. In our position in the world. Oh, no, I'm not saying he hasn't done some good things since he's been there. See, I think I disagree with you I think he's done better than I had anticipated. You said that you don't think he's lived up to the expectations and everything he promised. Mm-hmm. So, I think that alone is different because you couldn't see the foreign policy issues coming, but there'd be nobody better right now. So I'm certainly glad that he's there over Donald Trump, but I'm just saying that I would never have voted for him.
Like in the primary? Because you did vote for him. You're saying never outside of this particular situation would you have voted for him, I guess is what you're saying?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But I was forced to. And my God, I'm so glad that he's there compared to the other one, obviously. But, that is not a reason to go in to vote for somebody. To bother to go down to the polls and to pull a lever because he's the lesser of the evils sucks.
It does suck, but it's obvious. It's easy. It's hard, but it's easy.
I don't think you should ever encourage people to lose their vision of what it is to be a citizen and their rights. Of course.
All that I'm saying is that you just got to understand the timeline of politics. I totally agree. Do not give up on if you hear me on my show, I am the most optimistic person ever. I think we are going to lead an amazing progressive movement led by the younger generations, towards an amazing future. And I think it's very possible.
And you don't smoke weed?
What? No, I don't smoke weed.
Okay, just making sure because you're not seeing the same generation of Z that I'm seeing. And that I think a lot of people are seeing where they are apathetic and they don't care. And, they're more into their tribal worlds than they've ever been. And it's just getting worse and worse and worse. And, they're trying to divide the country.
But, okay, wait. So I agree that generally it's kind of a flip of the coin if the young people are going to show up. But two things. First, just as far as opinion goes, we have the most progressive generation coming up. That's hopeful. And my job, along with a bunch of other people, is going to be mobilizing that group of progressive people. They have it in their head. We got to get their bodies moving. The second thing is it's not impossible, and they're not always incapable of showing up. Like this last election, highest youth turnout in a super long time.
Where were they for Hillary?
But no. But you understand my point, though. It's not that inherently they're super demotivated. It's the fact that maybe they have a little bit more of a pure threshold, and they need a candidate that is like a lot of reasons to vote for a candidate. And I'm saying my job's going to be getting those good candidates. Not my job, obviously. Who knows how much I'm going to be able to help with this, but I'll be a part of it. Getting good candidates like the ones who we identify as progressives in Congress, and Bernie, who will motivate those young voters in the future. But the voters are there and they're willing to be motivated. It's not like, yeah, sorry.
And you need to realize that there's a lot of things that motivate those young voters, and they're not all going to necessarily agree with you. And why not? You're talking about this great progressive movement that's going to come down. Let me tell you something, kid. And I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that because it sounds disrespectful, and I don't mean it that way. But let me tell you, every generation that is built on another generation is more progressive than the last, by your definition. I mean, I guarantee you, the slaveholders that were born to the slaveholders gave more leeway to their slaves. I'm just saying that, it's very small progressive movements over time, and it's sometimes it's just not enough.
And we're standing on the shoulders of all those movements, and I think that's how progress goes.
And when you're saying, you want to inspire them to do this, and why not inspire them to do what they feel is right? So if they want to vote Jill Stein, they want to vote Libertarian, they want to vote for a Republican, why not do that? Why put your will on somebody else?
No, I'm not going to force anyone to do anything. I'm going to. Where do you think people's perception of what is right, what they feel is right, comes from? It comes from a lot of places. One of those being their media consumption, or in my personal life, their interactions with their family and friends. And as someone who a lot of times in a group of friends is the only one that keeps up a lot with politics, my job can be, and then obviously with a show environment, to push people, nudge people into believing that what they feel is right is also aligned with what I think will lead to a better future. And in the case, we're talking about, I just want to convince people not to feel that going in and voting for Jill Stein is the right thing.
I understand what you're saying. I just 100% disagree with it. I just think that it's very presumptuous of you to look at one of your fellow citizens that were born in the same country and have the same rights as you and tell them what to do.
Okay,
I mean,
really?
If you want to bang down,
are you even hearing what I'm saying?
Yeah, if you want to bang down your points and make
politics is a bunch of push and pulls of influence. It's all about influencing people to believe different things. And whenever you're either in media or a politician, you're trying to not tell people what they have to do, convince them with good arguments and good appeals to their heart to believe certain things and to come along with you. Instead of, that would be like saying a politician giving a speech that we should have universal health care and you should support that, is them taking away your right to believe what you want. Why are they telling you to believe that we should have universal health care? No, that's what we do. We're trying to influence people to believe what we think is correct and what will lead to the best outcomes for America. It's not presumptuous. It's logical.
I think it's presumptuous.
You think I should sit back and just say, do whatever you want, nothing matters?
I think honestly, no, the better message is just to be active, to get out and vote. Even Obama doesn't tell people, he'll say, I want you to vote Democrat, but just participate in the process. I think we're at a desperate time, and it's so bad that just getting people to participate, letting them use their minds to figure out what they believe in the direction they want this country to go is way more important. So if they want to be libertarian when they can, I mean, I couldn't this last time. If they want to then be Republican and then be Democrat based on who's running. I mean, look, there's some good Republican candidates coming up outside of Trump. I mean, I love Ben Sasse. And look, he is really fairly right wing. There are some that are coming up. I'm not seeing a lot of that with the Democrats. And that bothers me. It bothers me. Who do you see in the Democrats coming up that you would vote for? Because there is a potential that this old man that's in the office now could die. If that happens, there's no way Kamala Harris is ever going to get elected. So no, you can't really.
I agree. Who do I think is coming up? I think that's the scary part. Like in my video about who should run, or I don't know. Maybe it was that Biden was playing. No. Oh, it was in the video about Hillary being nudged to run, where I went through all the people that I could think of, or some of the people I could think of. That's the scary part about being a Democrat. There aren't very many up-and-comers, but that doesn't mean that the Republican up-and-comers are anything we should be hopeful about. Now, just to be clear, this isn't because they're Republican. It's because they have bad views. And so if I had to pick someone, like there's people that I believe have good policies and their heart's in the right place, but do I think that I would want to put them forward as like a presidential candidate? No. An example of this is generally AOC, I think, pushes for really good things. I don't think that she could ever win a Democratic primary. Right. I say ever. Right now, she could not win. Another great, I'm seeing in the chat, Katie Porter. Again, yep. Awesome vibe, super cool politician. I don't think she would be able to do well in a Democratic primary.
No, well, look at Kamala Harris coming from the same state. She did abysmally. And no, you're right. Coming from California, she's not going to. It's because
the good thing is Katie Porter does know how to, win in the more conservative district. But I do like John Ossoff. I think he would have national appeal, but he's too new. So I think he would be an up and comer, but he's too up and coming and not established enough. Warnock, I like. Again, he just got elected. He might not even win a Senate seat again, but I think he would have national appeal. So people like that, I don't have this like it has to be an uber progressive, because I understand that we're still convincing people that that's the way, even though when you ask them on individual issues, they agree with us. When you ask them about a candidate, we don't yet have, a majority of voters on our side. So someone who's, progressive, but maybe not Bernie, even though I think if Bernie was younger and ran again, he would have a chance. So there's people, but there's definitely not a really promising candidate like there was in Obama's kind of era.
I would have paid thousands of dollars for a ticket to watch a debate between Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump.
I know. It would have been so much better.
I had to watch that first debate when I was here in Puerto Rico, and I watched it going in and out of a bar because I couldn't take it. I couldn't sit there, and I am, very much a wonk for this kind of stuff. And I just couldn't sit there and watch it because I thought both of them were such trash that, I already knew which direction I was going to go. So, I got what you're saying.
Someone put Beto in the chat. I think if he won governor of Texas, yeah, he would have a pretty good chance. Like if he won governor and then was a goodish governor for a couple terms, I think he would. But again, it's kind of that I really do think 2 election cycles from now, we're going to have a lot of good candidates. It's this upcoming one that's terrifying because we really don't have someone else.
I think Beto has a chance at this too, because Greg Abbott lately has been really screwing some crap up.
Yeah.
I mean, like shutting off the borders, trucking the immigrants to DC, just doing some really weird stuff. And already Texas is shifting. But, I just long for the day of somebody like a Perot or somebody that comes along as a third party that's an alternative. Perot was a little weird, but he was at least a good alternative. There was a shot at least a third party. And that's just, I think that's why I still classify myself mostly as a, libertarian, because I just don't see any other way to be. Because everybody else that's in the two parties is too close-minded to see a range. That's why I brought up Ben Sass, and that's why I gave you the thumbs up on Katie Porter. My God, I think both of them are great. But it's because they're both intelligent. They believe what they say, and that's what we need. We don't need people that are pandering constantly.
Yeah.
And virtue signaling is pandering.
So on that, like
MAGA is pandering.
Yeah. It's an interesting question. I love the contradiction of, just as a side note, how the MAGA movement screams that the left hates America because they're always criticizing it. And the title of their movement is Make America Great Again, which means it's not currently great. It's like, so you're just always criticizing it for not being great enough. So what okay. But back on track, the conversation about third party versus Democratic Party, I think, is an interesting one that has a clear answer, but it's interesting to have. So why, I think you understand that right now, most voters identify themselves as either Democratic or Republican. Why wouldn't you just take over the better party, the party that's already better right now, take over that one?
And you know who makes the decision every single election cycle?
Who?
Wait, what you just said is true. Most people identify as Democrat or Republican, but the people that make the decision are the independents. They are the ones that are important. They might only be a 10 to 20% sliver. and there's 40, 40, and 20, right? But it's that 20% that sways it from one way to another every single time.
But okay, yes, but you could never win with just 10% of the vote or whatever. You need the base of a party plus the independents. And so I'm saying, why not take over the better party right now and make it what it should be, instead of wasting your time, as Nina Turner says, time, what did she say, something, and treasure, on a third party dream that's so unlikely, when you could, it's still super hard, but you could have a chance. Like we saw with Bernie, he had a chance of taking over the Democratic Party with a very different ideology, that I think would have appealed to the middle.
But I mean, let's just be realistic. So the establishment, the Clinton campaign and the establishment would never have allowed that to happen. And whatever. But here's
at the end of the day, though, voters are the ones who put people in office.
If there's a right candidate that comes along, Luke, seriously, like I said, Perot got 17%. I'm pretty sure on that number. But he pulled from both sides. If you have a right candidate that comes along, it can pull from both sides. Why not support that candidate if that's what you believe? I mean, there is nothing that is enshrined in the Constitution that's a two-party system. The people that have enshrined that are the Democrats and the Republicans. So why would you support either group of those people who have enshrined the lack of your ability to vote for your country?
I actually 100% agree that we should have more than two parties. Right now, though, if you can even comprehend how much you would have to do if you were trying to do it from the outside to break down the two-party system or add another viable party. But it's actually, if you got a lot of people in power, in democratic power, who believed in the concept of reforming the system, it's much easier to reform it from within than from the outside. And I know some people will say once they're in it, they won't want to reform it. Not true. We've seen politicians who are in there right now. If you don't think Bernie would have pushed, if he had gone in, and he's currently pushing to reform the system that he's in, that in theory could take away his own power, I think everyone agrees that he would do that. And so if we convince enough voters that the best thing for them is candidates like the progressives that we currently see in there, or whatever you think, and then those, once they're actually in power, because they had some reasonable chance of getting in power because they went through one of the parties, can reform the system and make it way more reasonable that we could see more than a two-party system develop.
Can I ask you a question, Luke? Seriously,
of course.
This sounds crappy, and it's not meant to be. But you paid a lot of attention in history, right? In history class, so you've heard of the Whigs and the Tories and the Know Nothings and all these other third parties that have been out there, and you heard of Perot, and you have seen MAGA, which is also a derivative of the Republican Party. You've seen now some of the progressive, that as they call them, the squad. That's also the beginnings of a derivative of a party. The idea to have a third party is not crazy or far out there. In fact, we see throughout our history, our young history. You said that.
You just proved my point.
Important. That was real important. You said we're a really young country at 250 years old or whatever. And I'm like, well, I can make the argument that actually, if you look at a lot of Europe and everything else, we're actually one of the oldest ones, because so many people, there's been so many wars, and it has been rebuilt and rebuilt and rebuilt into different modes of thinking that, I could argue that we're almost one of the oldest. But being young enough at 250 years and having all those opportunities for the third parties, and those third parties making a difference in our history at times, I just think that that's important, not to give up on that hope.
100%.
And I hear somebody your age sit there and say, well, this is the reality now. You know what? Quite frankly, this has been the reality for what? Since Wilson? This has been the reality for 120 years.
No, but even in the cases you're talking about, movements consumed the system from within the system. They sprouted out, and that's not to say that we could very quickly see a third party like you just identified, which perfectly proved my point. You said MAGA is, I think you call it a derivative of the Republican Party, the squad of the Democratic Party. Exactly. So you're able to get on the national stage and get some level of power. And just like Bernie, who is an independent but caucuses with Democrats, you're able to identify yourself as something different. But all you're saying is when it comes ballot time, there's going to be a D next to my name. I don't know in the case of Bernie that's the case, but I'm saying so that you have a chance of getting in office, so you have both the power and the bully pulpit to convince the country that the third party is needed, or that your derivative of the, is that even the right word? That your, sect of the current party is something worth believing in. But if you're just on the side screaming as the whatever, oh, we should have a third party. Yeah, cool. You got to get enough attention and a national spotlight that's powerful enough for the everyday Joe to invest in in the vision you're trying to
I disagree
promote.
On this idea, but I understand what you're saying, but I disagree because all those little side movements have historically been pulled back in. Gary Johnson, for example, he was elected as a Republican, and then his policies were very libertarian anyway when he was the governor for 2 sessions, and then went off and joined with Bill Weld, who was a Republican governor from a liberal state in Massachusetts, went off and did their own thing. To me, that is a much better way than doing it from what you're calling from within, because Nancy Pelosi has pulled the squad back. The Republicans are only going to let MAGA go so far. And as soon as they get a chance, they're pulling it back because they're going to.
Really? You really believe that? I think MAGA is the perfect example. Everyone watching, was the Republican Party able to reel in Trump or MAGA? No. You can run a candidate that convinces the hearts and minds of a base of a party that. What?
It's only been 4 years. It's only been 5 years.
You think the Republican Party has a chance of reeling in as long as voters still believe in this movement?
What was in 2010?
Why wouldn't they have done it yet? They stormed the Capitol. Now's the time.
Well, no, I think maybe some people that are in the chat still can help. What was the group of Republicans that were being elected in 2010? They were
Tea Party.
Yes, I forgot. I just blanked on it for whatever. And yet I'm drinking tea. That's hilarious. But the Tea Party, that movement, what did they do? Hold them back in. It took a while, though. It took 2 rounds. I mean, we've only seen MAGA crazies for about 5 years. You got to realize
the Tea Party kind of blossomed into the MAGA.
Correct.
It set the stage, so it's not like it got reeled in. It went even crazier. So here, and let me say this. I think even you and every single person watching this and every person that I would talk to would agree the Republican establishment did not want Trump to become their candidate in 2016. Everyone will agree to that. They hated him. There's so much evidence of it. And so if you think that, for example, you said Bernie, they would never let him win because they're so powerful. So was the Republican establishment, and they couldn't stop Trump. And the reason is because Trump appealed so much to this particular group of Americans that he was able to overpower the establishment. We can do the same thing, and we have a better thing to run on than just fear and hate. And he did appeal a little bit to working class concerns. He lied, but he did appeal a little bit. So that's proof of what I just said, of what I'm saying this whole time.
Right. Okay. I'll let it go at that. But yeah, and I think some of this is just literally a difference in the age. It's like it's the idea, and I'm just letting you know.
My soul is 300 years old, brother.
Yes.
I've seen many things.
So well, that's disturbing. We should probably check into home child services on your parents. But
no, my parents were perfect. I just, God came down from above and he said, Luke, I'm going to leave your body the same. Have you ever watched the movie Benjamin Button?
I have not. That is one I have not seen.
It's this guy who ages backwards.
Yeah, I know.
And so he's like this wrinkly child and he's super old. And then in his body form, but his brain is a baby. And at the end of life, he's a baby, but his brain's a grandpa. That's not me, but I'm telling you, I've experienced 3 times your lifetime in my dreams.
Oh my God.
No. Wait. Before you talk, my authentic point is, I prefer you address like the arguments I'm making or challenge the proof that I'm providing, as opposed to just saying, "Oh, we just have different perspectives because we're different ages."
Well, but at least if you can acknowledge another person's perspective based on whatever it is, based on age, race, or other things, if we can still have a conversation and come to some kind of consensus in this country. If we continue to do what we're doing and we continue down the thought and the path that there's only two ways to think of everything, this country's gonna pull itself apart. I really do believe that. And I'm fearful for that. I made a prediction years ago with my mother, and I said, you'll be dead. I'll probably be dead before it happens, but I'm not sure that your niece and nephew will. We sit there and see things like Ron DeSantis taking on Disney over LGBT. I mean, we're seeing these things on both sides of the aisle. It's gonna eventually just come apart. So that whole idea about being 250 years old is, that's kind of dead. It's kind of a dead perspective. I'm hoping that it stays together for a while, but man, it's
so
dicey.
I think when people say the both sides thing, I agree. Like, I've talked a lot, oh my gosh, I say this so many times on my show, that the left media does a really bad job of being flawless in their honest framing and the presentation so that it is completely hole free. You can't poke any holes in the argument. It is completely honest. There's a lot of progressive shows that have the right positions, but they'll do what kind of right-wing media does, okay, to a lesser degree, and present things in kind of ways that are favorable to their argument, that leave out certain details and maybe are very dishonest. And so I agree to that. But I don't think that the being torn apart as a country is like this equal fault, because I think one movement is leaning way harder into fear, hate, and I will just say fear in particular of other people, identity, other ways of life. Whereas I think the left goes too far sometimes, honestly. But fundamentally, our movement is about moving forward. It's less about just rejecting
it needs to be us.
Another ideology.
Them and us. It doesn't need to be our side and their side. And I just wish that you could get the message out there that it's got to be us. My God, look what happened in the pandemic. And as soon as it was able to be divided, we now just celebrated 1 million deaths because we had one side that didn't want to listen to any kind of authority and a president that didn't believe in anything. If he just ignored it, it would all go away. And then we had the other side that reacted completely a little bit too crazy on the other side. And it's because nobody was listening to each other. And I just would hope, for our future, for the future of the country, I'll be dead. You'll still be around probably. But, I just hope that people start listening to one another. Stop thinking about it's this side and that side all the time. I
hear you. But at some point, one side has to be pushed up against. I don't like when people frame politics like, well, we could all just come together in the center and hold hands. Yeah, we could. And we can say that till the cows come home. But it's not going to make life better for anyone. Listen, wait. No, this is how we make life. This is how we unite the country. I do agree we have some issues on the left. And we need to stop being exclusionary in any way. And if we can make a purely inclusionary movement, as long as those within the movement aren't themselves exclusionary, interesting there, then we present a really, really good vision to the country, which I think at its core we're doing, but then we wrap it up in a weird presentation where we're screaming at people for not knowing the specifics of every single woke issue, which I'm not someone who's like, we're so woke, it's stupid. No. I'm just saying that, like, for example, I've talked about with trans issues, let people learn, don't get onto them, don't call them transphobic until you understand that they know the details and still are being hateful. Because some people are just, ignorant to the specifics. So on a larger scale, we present a really good vision of the future and we unite a lot of people behind it. There's still going to be wackos. We push those out of the way. And at some point, there's going to be some evil actors, and we do have to reject their ideology. But we convince enough of the country where we're pretty much united around a really good vision for the future, as other great leaders have done in the past. It's not about walking around saying, can't we all just love one another and hold each other's hands? Like, we could. That doesn't get us anywhere. We have to convince people that uniting is worth it, because what we could do by uniting is amazing things besides just kiss each other on the cheek.
100%. And I'm telling you, I'll remind you why we had Trump in the first place. It's because young people didn't come out to vote. I will also remind you to get people that interested in voting at a young age. You have to also respect where they come from and different views that they have, and just get it into the process, and then hope you, once they're into the process, you can convince them to come to your side if that's what you want to do. But I think the problem is so deeper and so much more systemic than just the idea of getting them to go one side or the other. It's to get them involved. And I think that's just the most important, part of it. And if that says, if you have to say to somebody, hey, I disrespect, or I don't respect the Republican viewpoint, but I respect you, go, it's not Pollyanna to think that you can have that discussion and still remain friends with people.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's what's coming now. But I think that's what's coming with young people, that they're also scared to say anything, and everything hurts their one feeling that they have left in their body. And it's a frightening thing.
Yeah. And I'm seeing something in the chat. Let me just say, so everyone's clear, because maybe I haven't made this clear enough. It's something I mix what I've said on the show when I say in my personal life. I am like so aggravated at the fact that many progressives think Republicans are like all crazy, hateful people. I have so many Republican family and friends who are awesome, amazing. All that it is they have had their own life experiences that led them to believing, for example, on abortion. You believe that a fetus in a mother's womb is the same as a baby. Well, if you believe that, then a lot of the things that they advocate for seem to be a logical conclusion from that. And again, if you believe that it's the same as a full human life. And so I really, really dislike the way that even, I won't name names, a lot of the commentators I watch talk about Republicans as if they're all these crazy lunatics. It's not true. There's definitely people who are a little off the rocker, who are kind of hardcore MAGA. There's a lot of people who voted for Trump who really didn't want to, because he's kind of, crazy, but just felt like the Democratic Party was going to do this, that, or the other based on their own media influences. And a lot of them are delightful, service-oriented people who have an amazing set of values and stuff. It's just their life experiences led them to believing things contrary to what we currently believe. So I want people to keep that in mind. I'm not someone who walks around thinking like Republicans are bad. No, I think Republicans have certain viewpoints I disagree with, and I hope to convince them. And I think some people have gone way too far and maybe are too far gone. But for the most part, there's a big chunk of people who are actually able to be reached and are reasonable. And I don't think you should exclude people from being your friend if they're simply Republican. Now, if they're saying that you're a horrible degenerate because you're gay, maybe that's reasonable. You don't hang out with them. But overall, you get my point.
Get ready for the reality of that if you haven't seen it yet, man.
I've seen it. You don't have to worry. But my point is that you don't have to be friend with someone who's hateful towards you.
And that's what I worry about with the younger generation, with the youngest generation, not the slightly older, the youngest generation. Any kind of adversity that's out there. I mean, are you kidding me that they're putting safe spaces in college campuses?
But that's not even That's not even a major issue. It's like such a waste of conversation.
It's a symptom of the direction of things. I mean, you go to college so that you are able to have debate. I mean, you can't have debate because somebody's in the safe space because they don't want to hear something that somebody else thinks. I mean, it gets a little crazy. Hey, you're not in college, right? Why?
I am.
Are you? Good. I didn't know if you were or not. What's your major?
Guess.
I
Political
okay.
science.
So you're going to be a lobbyist also.
No, I don't
So
think so.
you're going to sell out. All right. Just everybody in the chat hear that.
Hear
He
it.
thinks
That's his prediction. We'll
he's
see.
going to do all these great things, and eventually he's going to turn around and sell out to make a bunch of money. Because that's the way the system is.
I won't have to sell out because all these amazing people will sign up for my Patreon. That's what's gonna happen.
Oh, is that your plan? And
then I don't have to sell out.
That's going the same way as your music career, Luke. And by the way, I got a text. I was making sure somebody
Wait 1 second. Go for it.
I got a text. I was making sure somebody wasn't breaking up with me. Hold on. No, it's good. It's just my neighbor.
Nice. Let me just remind everyone. Doug said, I wouldn't want to make you cry afterwards. That's what he said in the chat when proposing a debate or saying if we debated. And I don't see any tears, Doug.
You want me to go harder?
I don't think personal is relevant, but I was hoping you were going to really challenge my political beliefs, but I feel unchallenged.
I was trying to challenge your mind, which is why I asked if you were in college to see if it ever is challenged outside of YouTube, because I think that's just the most important thing, as a whole. I mean, we can do this. We could do this back and forth, and I can down on you, and somebody can have this point and that point. I mean, sure, it'll probably get better viewers, and you could probably put.
No, I agree. A meaningful conversation is better, but no. Like, just so you know, oh my gosh, talk to anyone in my family. My favorite thing is being challenged, is being intellectually stimulated. My brother and I have a lot of disagreements, and when I'm feeling down, I just call him to debate him, because that is the best thing for my soul, is having someone who disagrees with me challenge me super hard. Right now, I'm happier than I've been all day. So I agree that it's really healthy for people to challenge themselves, because what happens is what?
You're going to make somebody a real interesting boyfriend at some point.
I have, and I'm single right now. No, I'm kidding.
It's going to be a long, hard road.
Yep. But no, I agree. Like, people ought to, I would encourage them to challenge themselves and their beliefs, because otherwise you get in your little cave and a media personality is telling you exactly what you want to hear, and you turn into what we've seen as far as conspiracy theories go, and that has happened on both sides for sure. But I don't think it's horrible for someone who occasionally, wants to be in a space where they don't feel constantly judged or challenged to do that. It's like, okay, not everyone's up to constantly debate. If you want to have certain spaces that you identify as being purely inclusionary and accepting.
If that's the case, you're not emotionally intelligent enough to be at that college. I mean, that's just my personal belief on that. I mean, because it gets down to where it infringes on people's right to free speech, walking up and down the hallways, because if somebody else has to run into a safe space and they can make a formal.
Do you know what that's not it? That's not it. People aren't saying, hey, all of these hallways, no one can. No.
No, I know. I'm just saying that I just find that. By the way, if you ever watch South Park, watch the one about safe spaces. It's a nice little musical number. It's hilarious.
But okay, here's my thing too. I actually agree that, like, so one of the lines I use a lot is love someone you don't understand. So I try to do that. And so in the case of this, I don't understand being so sensitive that actually in a lot of cases, even things that are considered really offensive, I hear them and I'm like, I don't get how anyone, like, for example, when people make homophobic jokes, I don't get offended, but I get that it's offensive, if that makes sense. Like, I get that people would be offended by it, but I don't see what's offensive, because I'm like, okay, whatever. So I don't understand why people are so sensitive, but my policy is radical love. Love people you don't understand. They have different life experiences, whatever. So while we can't go too far where, like, other people's right to express their views openly isn't violated, as long as it's not harming someone, I'm just gonna not, like, bash them all the time. I just don't think that's, like, a big issue in the country, really. Some sensitive people, you know?
Really? Okay. That's interesting. It's hard to, I was really hoping the one thing that we didn't talk a lot on the feed about was LGBT issues, because you aren't in that same space that I'm in. And I don't think I can have that kind of discussion with someone your age. And I feel really bad about that.
Wait. Classify, that's like, you know what you just said to me? You know what you just said to me? Hey, Luke, there's cookies in the pantry, but you absolutely cannot eat any of them. What do you mean? What is this topic I can't engage with?
Oh, do you think that I did that on accident or purpose?
Or is it like something weird and gross? If it's like unrelated to politics, then I'm uninterested. I don't want to talk about weird stuff.
Well, no, it's related. Yeah. Well, I mean, LGBT has been related to politics for a long time now. So obviously, never having to really go out in the streets and fight for your rights, not having to see people dying every day that were your friends because of somebody believing, oh, that's the gays, and we're not going to deal with that. We didn't surpass the pandemic. Didn't surpass the number that died of HIV until middle of 2021. That's how bad the HIV was. It was a pandemic in a certain group of people, right? And it's really, really hard to sit and have any kind of substantive. And it's not just because you're young, but it's because you didn't see what older people saw with both politics and the results of those politics. And so the idea of getting people more involved with things is specifically that, to the idea that we could be repeating ourselves. Imagine if this abortion thing is allowed to stand, and we go back to the 1960s and 50s when women literally were dying of illegal abortions. It could happen here. I mean, and so I think that your generation has come up with the idea that, just like Buddha just said the other day, and I watched your video right before we were talking, where he said, have we hit the high water mark? I know exactly what he's saying. And that has got to be something that you and your generation is particularly worried about, because this is all you know. It's not all we know. We have seen way worse. My mother and her generation has seen worse than that. So, when you like to say every generation is more progressive, it's somewhat true, but it's because some other generation fought for it.
Yes, of course.
And so that's why with the LGBT thing, I don't think that it's.
But okay, a couple of things on that. The first, I would say, while I joke about, I joke a lot with my parents, because they'll be like, Luke, you're still our son, you're still our kid. And I'm like, no, I'm your peer. I'm a full adult now. And I'm pretty sure that I'm older than you guys now. Yep, I'm pretty sure. So I joke, but I recognize there is undeniably something you gain that you can't quite quantify from real life experiences. And that's something that anyone who's older than I am statistically has a better likelihood of having more of those experiences that can develop a more nuanced and, vivid understanding of a particular issue. And I also very much respect that and seek guidance and information from people who do have those extra experiences. And also, like I said at the very beginning or early in the debate, we stand on the shoulders of, while I'm saying our generation is going to make awesome change, we're only able to take the step from step 20 to step 21 or whatever, because past generations took all those other steps, and we stand on their shoulders. Plus, we're going to work with those awesome generations. I mean, there's so many people that are really avid followers of me who, are not Gen Z. A lot of them aren't even millennials. A lot of them are above that. And that's amazing. And I think we unite with everyone that we can, and we recognize whose shoulders we're standing on. What do you say?
But why do you think that is? Why do you think you have, I mean, these live streams, I have no idea how many are in there now, but you don't have a ton of people on these live streams, and you're new and everything. But why do you think that such a high percentage of people are significantly older than you? I mean, outside of the one or two dirty old men that are sitting there in the audience, it's because the rest of everybody has hope. They have to want to have hope. They have to want to believe that somebody your age gives a shit, and that somebody your age is going to know what they're doing, because eventually you're going to be taking care of us. And we've laid the groundwork, but unless you have enough people together with you, this is going to be a Margaret Atwood scenario where things are going to start sliding backwards. You know, you came out as gay just a few years ago, and you probably came out at about the same time that marriage was legalized. Imagine the people that are 70 years old that never thought they'd see the day. Imagine all those that were dead that never did. And so we can easily be back in that scenario and situation right now if we don't get more young people involved. I really do believe that. And so anyway, you know, and I'll tell you this, even young Republicans aren't monolith on what they think about abortion.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
I mean, there's a lot of young Republicans, fairly right wing, that I've talked to or seen, you know, talk, that are like, yeah, I'm just not going to go there. It's a woman's right to choose. Or they say, I'm not going to go there with gay marriage. I think it's established law now. But yeah, they're a small fraction, and they're a small fraction of the whole population. And unless they get together and join the rest of us, that other majority is coming in and taking over. And you're starting to see that right now with abortion. You are going to see that with other things. I can guarantee you. You probably won't see it with interracial marriage, since 2 of the justices are now have interracial marriages. But you know,
and that's why I think it's so important that young progressives don't create a space that is so like litmus tested that nobody can have access to it or feel welcomed in it, because they can't do a quiz on what the newest wokest thing is, you know? And while of course the core principles we can't compromise on, we can compromise on the specifics of our, you know, mainly inclusionary practices. And so I think I've noticed, I talk to people in my personal life who are like, wait, everything you're saying makes total sense. Why do I hate the left so much? And it's like, because the way that we broadcast our message isn't so down to the principles, down to the basics, and inclusionary. And so I definitely agree that to have any chance of uniting, like you're talking about, people of kind of different baskets of views that are not a monolith, we do have to have that mindset of as many people are as welcome as possible.
And you have to be able to engage people to talk about their own story. To give you an example, that I told you, like one of my best friends, she's from Europe. She has an 11-year-old daughter that started her period 2 weeks ago, just as this was coming out. So she has lived her whole life with the ability to get an abortion. She has a daughter over here, and for 11 years, nothing. And now all of a sudden she has to explain to her daughter that this is going backwards. Can you imagine? Well, I don't know what kind of, I mean, I'm sure she's not having discussions about it now, but I mean, you know, what must be going through her head to have to think about that? What a horrible, you know, but that's why I can tell you what it was like before and how horrible it was. And unless you can inspire people to get up and start moving. And that includes young Republicans who have for generations voted Republican, because this issue might be the one that they turn. And if they're an active voter and they turn on this one, this might be the thing that makes a difference, or some other social issue, or some other, you know, economic issue. For instance, they might, you know, there might be young Republicans that think, you know, why does everybody else have health care and we don't? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just rational. So when you hear me at the beginning of this and say, you know, I do believe in a basic, you know, healthcare system for everybody, you have to be reasonable in your politics, but not give up your ideas. And that's Agreed. Really hard to do as you get older, Luke.
Yeah, my biggest
And the idea that you're already
Concern.
saying us versus them, this or that, and I feel like I'm not sure you got ideals. I'm not sure you have ideals left, and that's upsetting.
Wait, what just happened?
I'm saying that when I hear you talk about us versus them, Republican,
Who? What? Is me simply identifying a party and their views, us versus them? No, I am. Watch you watch my show. I am never dehumanizing, name calling, any of that of anyone who, and that is the trendy thing to do. Is you have your sets of views and you hate on everyone who doesn't. All I do is say, here are the views that I believe in, and I hope everyone else can believe in them, and I'm going to do my absolute best to convince people who are even very far from me politically that this is the best way forward. That's very far from us versus them. And I don't have ideals? What?
You've been using the language of we don't do our message right because we're part of the Democrats, which then in converse says they are not. They are the other. And anytime you divide people between us and the other...
Oh, please. Doug, you're saying the word I, and that means that you're not referencing me also, which means that you're dividing between the two of us. No, I'm saying that we believe there's a group of people right now, and I'm identifying them as progressives, who are largely a part of the Democratic Party, who believe a sort of similar sets of political ideas. And I'm saying as that we must appeal to the larger we and bring them all into our current we, so we have a really big we. Is that less divisive?
Now, you got to be more specific about what you do with your we. That's all I can say. I get what you're saying, but the danger is there to not include those other people, and I think we just see more and more of that.
Question: How do I critique the messaging of one of the political parties without dividing? Can I never reference that there's two parties?
Well, you can always join a third one. But I understand what you're talking about. You're talking about pronoun usage. Look, you don't know what I do in my real life all day long, but trust me, I deal with this all freaking day long. So I understand what you're saying, but I also understand the context of how you're saying it. Because you're trying to identify as one thing or another. And hey, you know what? That's great to an extent. But if we get down to the point where everybody that is involved, which is already a very small group of people, then tries to divide apart, there's going to be a backslide. And you're going to see a lot of things that I would never have predicted up until 4 years ago that you were going to see in your future. And it concerns me. So why not inspire people that say, I have an ideal, and my ideal is this, and libertarian is the thing that is closest to my ideal. Why not inspire me just to be interested so that I can have these long discussions with some kid in Texas? Because I am already out of hope. And I think a lot of people that watch your channel like you, not for the commentary so much as they're watching you go through what we've all went through. And it gives them hope that somebody else cares that's 30 years younger than you, And that's why I will continue to be a Patreon. And that's why I wanted to spend this time, discussing these things with you. Because I want you to be able to go out and have those discussions with others. I am very glad to hear that you're in college. A lot of people have taken, a COVID gap year in there. And so I'm glad that you did not do that. And it's just unfortunate that you're going to be a political science major. I think you would make a good journalist, but I think political science only leads you to lobbying. I think it's your only shot to do anything with that degree.
We'll see. If you want to put money on it, speaking of lobbying, I'll put money on it with you. I have a very clear life plan. It's all detailed.
Really?
That's all happening. Yeah,
so
it's private.
Does it have anything to do with the guy on the phone or anything to do with the music career? Which, by the way, for anybody that hasn't heard Tired yet, you should get on there and click right away.
But it's so bad, right? Is that what you're saying?
No, it was your most successful one with the likes. I actually thought it was the best not because it was good, it was because the others were such shit. But it was decent. It was okay, man. I mean, it wasn't horrible.
Oh my gosh.
You go. That's what I wanted.
Yep, you got what you wanted. No, okay, but on the serious point you were making, what was the serious point you were making? You made a point that I was gonna respond to. Then you got distracted, being a little bleep. What were you saying? It was a good point. Darn.
Bleeper?
Whatever.
I don't know.
Point is, I very much enjoyed talking with you, and you are esteemed. You are award-winning, right? Journalist?
Yeah. I've won, I guess, 3 AP awards, and I won a group award, but I don't know what we called that. But so it was, I guess, no, I've won, awards like that. I'll tell you this: I was the youngest press secretary in the history of the state of New Mexico. That's not hard. It's only been a state since I think 1933 or something.
That's so awesome.
But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of those kind of firsts. I mean, when Hillary Clinton looks at you and says, "Hey, Doug, I remember you," and brings you over the line of all the other journalists, and you're getting to walk in front of them. Those are things that change your perception and cause you to even have an interest at this older age. I hope you find that, Luke. What I would do if I were you, I would plan on, in some way, either through your stream or however else, going to either Iowa or New Hampshire in 2024, because it'll change your perspective on things.
You know what's funny? 2020 primary, I drove all the way to Iowa.
Did you?
Mm-hmm.
Did you? How was it? I've only done New Hampshire.
It was good. It was interesting. I saw Biden speak. That was a boring speech. I saw Pete Buttigieg speak. We were going to try to go to Bernie, but it was like crazy packed, so we didn't go. But yeah, it was interesting. It's crazy how much weight that little state, carries. And it looks like that might change this year, actually.
And a shout out to where I'm currently living here in Puerto Rico. There's 3.1 million people here, and the closest state in size is Iowa. The only difference in the American citizens that live in both is that they can't vote here. So I got to say that in this long stream at some
I agree
point.
with you.
It's such an injustice. I have to at least put that in there for my people here. But yeah, I'm glad that you did it that way. But think about covering it in some other way, like it more professionally. Reach out to Packman and say, "Hey, you want me to do this? Reach out to somebody that or some other entity." And once you then become part of the reporter class of people that are there, and you have your little badges and everything, and you see from a different perspective, and you walk up and talk to people like me that you might not normally talk to, because it's now your job, you'll have a wider breadth and belief on what reality is when it comes to politics.
Gotcha. Okay, to close it out, you can pick from any of your jobs. I'd be interested. And if you can't think of one, I have a different question. If you just can't think of one out of the blue, but like most interesting, wild experience in all of that. Like, oh, Hillary sneezed and a booger came out, or as a press secretary, you had to lie or something.
Oh, shit. God, one. I would say with covering the primary, I was literally 20 or 21. I think I was 20, almost about to turn 21 when I was in the New Hampshire primary. And Bill and Hillary Clinton stayed in the room next to me, okay? So the guy standing outside that we'd have to walk by is a guy named James Carville. You know who he is, right?
Yep.
And so he decided to take the young journalist down for pizza. And that man is a snake. That man is sleazy as shit. So he's like, "So where do you work?" I can almost do the impression. I used to be able to do it more. But I met her, but I didn't interview her at that time in New Hampshire. But it was the second story I was ever going to have published, as a professional. We snuck into their room. They left the door ajar, right? So at 4:30 in the morning, they had left. We snuck into the room, me and this girl, and we went through the trash. I have actually things that are historical documents that I took out of their trash. And they left the coffee pots burning to the point where the glass had burned into into the coffee. So I wrote a kind of a commentary story. That's all I was doing up there because I wasn't a real professional yet. But I said, how can we trust somebody who can't remember to turn off the coffee pots to run the country? And so that was, I love that. I still look back on that and love that and being able to do that. But that was pretty like ballsy for somebody that age.
Just for the safety of this, that was all fictional. Isn't that illegal?
What's fictional?
You said you got government documents?
No, I've got documents from the campaign.
Oh, okay.
Historical documents. I said
historical
documents.
Wow, that's amazing. That's crazy.
You know what a fax machine is? Oh wait, you've never heard of those. But yeah.
No, on 300 years. Yes, I've heard of a fax machine. That was new technology back in my day.
So yeah, so no, I've got all that. So that's fun.
That's so crazy.
And another quick one. When I was press secretary in the Senate, and I was learning a lot from Governor Johnson, and where he started really helping form my beliefs at the time. He had a candidate that was getting railroaded out of the state. They had a state board of education. He nominated a candidate that was a homeschooler. Not only the Democrats were freaking out, but some of the Republicans were freaking out. And, so I'm in the office, like, talking to the press secretary and him and around the big oval. And so I said, what do we want to do? So they're talking about it. He just turns to me and goes, so Doug, what do you think we should do? And I went, what? He said, what do you think we should do about this? I said, I'm 24. That was the first thing out of my mouth. I'm 24. This is a big thing. And he goes, well, but you're a citizen of the state of New Mexico, right? Yeah. Do you vote? Yeah. What do you think we should do? So I was like, and I told him. And that was the first example that I ever heard of a politician really meaning and looking at somebody directly in the face and saying, I want your advice on moving forward with something. And I think a lot of people, the Boberts and the Cawthorns and these people are, and MGT, these people are up there to be showboats and to make something out of themselves and to be on media and everything else. But there are hardworking politicians that go in every single day trying to do what's best for the people. And when you can find one of those, and Hillary Clinton was definitely not one of them, but when you can find those people, those are the people to back. And I don't care what party they're from. I really don't. Those are the people that if that means going and working for a Republican, I'm telling you, Luke, if there's somebody that you believe in for certain reasons, you go do it. And but it's about being more just actively involved. I would have absolutely no problem working for a Democrat or a Republican again if I believed in them. Right. There's just so little to believe in anymore.
Yeah. Well, Doug, I appreciate it a ton. That was really fascinating. And I can't wait to talk in the future. Do you have anything that you want to plug or anything like that, or no?
No, I'm just somebody. It'd be disingenuous for me to sit here and plug something when I'm telling you the reason that I did this. And God, we have no social life if this is what we do on Friday night. But that I'm that concerned that I spent the time to do this. And by the way, I don't know if anybody heard this, but this is my first time ever doing a stream. I've done newspaper, radio, and TV, but I've never done streaming before. So Luke, you did take my virginity. I thank you for that. And I'm glad that I did this.
Awesome. All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You have a good one.